posting women at very important posts. But what is more important, to make gender mainstreaming as a part of daily business. And another very important point is that President yesterday mentioned health of society. And it's not a physical health of society which is needed, but it is a quality of life. It's psychological state of affairs of society. And it very much depends on the place what women and men play in the society. We have a very distinguished panel today, very many speakers. So we are short of time. I have to be very strict and really encourage all speakers to use 5 minutes for their introductory remarks. And then we will switch to more lively discussion, also engaging our audience, asking questions and commenting on what's heard. And most probably in the end of this panel, we will end up with some concrete proposals which could be later on integrated into policies and also reflected in the implementation of declaration which we are going to adopt today later. I'm not going to introduce right now the whole speakers, otherwise it will take very long time. I will introduce our speakers on the way of giving floor and explaining what and how. So what we decided to do is that we will now, with the first round of presentations, we will set the scene for our later discussion. And our speakers are representing countries, international organizations, their own experiences. And therefore, I would like to ask to present your view on empowerment of women from economic and political perspective and how it contributes to gender equality. And I would like to give floor as the first one to Minister of Justice of Georgia, Thea Tsulukiani. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, it's a great honor for me to be here with you, with such distinguished ladies. And also to be able to address this honorable audience composed of very well-known figures from our society and not only. And I would loudly and heartfully thank everybody who came here to attend this very important event for all of us. Certainly, the institutional clothes I wear as a human rights lawyer at the European Court of Human Rights during 10 years, and now Justice Minister of this country, have, of course, a meaning. Since my nomination in my current position 3 years ago, I have been trying to show de facto and de jure that women are important because they are in a majority in this society, in Georgia, and because traditionally women played an important role in Georgia's history, including politics. As the exhibition you can visit and see outside this room shows, the current women's active role in the political sphere in Georgia is based on what those women whose photos are exhibited outside this room did for this society. It was 1919. Where the First Republic of Georgia was founded in 1918, and it lasted until we were invaded by Russia in 1921. This exhibition called Women from Georgia shows that in 1919, when Georgia held its elections, legislative elections, women were given the right to vote. Women were given the right to stand for election. And as a result, in 1919, we had 5 women in Georgian parliament. Of course, after invasion and occupation, they were killed, and democracy was postponed in this country. But we should remind girls and women in this country that we continue their work. This is our legacy. When it comes to women participation in Georgian politics, of course we are not at our 0 point, and some very important things have been made until today. For instance, the organic law on political parties provides that political party will receive extra 30% in addition to the allocated funding if the party's election list is based on the 30% gender ratio per every 10 candidates. However attractive it may seem on the paper, this incentive proved almost useless. Without wanting to hurt any political party present in the room, yes, this incentive proved to be useless. For this purpose, our government, and in particular, I should say, the Ministry of Justice, tries with different non-governmental organizations and thanks to UN Women efforts to put in place something stronger. Right now we are working with our parliamentarians, and I should thank publicly those women MPs sitting in the room to support me in that battle. We are trying to introduce by law a temporary measure, women quotas for political parties, so that when in 2016 our guys from political parties sit down and try to constitute their political parties lists, they are obliged to think about women as well, so that women can be put on those lists at a place where they can be winner and that where they can have equal opportunity. Today, Georgian Parliament's doors are almost closed down for women. That's why we have only between 12 and 15 women in Parliament out of 150 MPs. In the past, it was 9 women. Of course, there is a progress, but it's not enough. That's what the Prime Minister of Georgia mentioned in the morning. We'll be doing everything with those non-governmental organizations and different members of our government, including men, who support this idea to open up doors of our parliament for women through introducing quotas for political parties. It's symptomatic, of course, that, for instance, in local municipalities where last year we held very important elections, first time after independence, where this government proved to be courageous enough to say that every single position would be elective and no one would be nominated from Tbilisi on local levels, that only 1 woman out of 70 was elected. Not because women could not win, but because there were no women candidates. Only 1 Gamgebeli out of 70 is not enough, you would all agree. We have many women judges in the judiciary, and I should greet our President of the Supreme Court, the first woman elected in the head of the judiciary. But other women judges working in the judiciary in Georgia do not have managerial powers. They are so-called, as we call them, ordinary judges. All the presidents of courts are men. Besides our tries to put in place quotas for women, we implemented other not less important steps. As the Prime Minister mentioned this morning, we adopted one of the most controversial laws in this country last year, the anti-discrimination law. The anti-discrimination law is a basic for all girls and women to have their rights protected. We are very proud that we introduced in that law principle of multiple discrimination, which is very useful in our everyday life, but especially in labor relationship. It's somewhat puzzling to see, however, that despite its undeniable weight, this principle has never got real traction on international scene. And I hope that in today's discussions, the notion of multiple discrimination will be fully redeemed. It was mentioned this morning that we adopted 7 years strategy for human rights. It's a document which was non-existent before, and it would, because it covers 7 years, it would survive our government and the next government of Georgia, and it will ensure continuity in the field of human rights in this country.
I was just saying that I'm so proud and great to be here. And it's an absolutely great event. I'd like to thank Tamar and all the other people of the MFA who have taken the idea further. And I think I was among the first participants to confirm my participation. It was more than a half a year ago, because when I heard about the conference, it was, wow, I have to come here. I wasn't the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I'm a career diplomat. I'm ambassador. But when I became Minister of Foreign Affairs, my decision was even more firm. I have to come here, I have to be here. So it's a real pleasure. And I'd also like to congratulate Georgia for your efforts, what you're doing. Your President's yesterday's remarks were absolutely inspiring. And the fact that this year is a Women's Year in Georgia is also very inspiring. And both exhibitions, absolutely fabulous. The one in President's office and the one here, so congratulations on that. And Žaneta, please let me know when I have some 30 minutes left.
Okay, I will monitor. Yeah.
So 30 seconds.
Yes, okay.
I'll try to be brief in my introductory remarks. First of all, we all know that we have very good legal international framework. We have very good declarations. 20 years ago, Beijing, 15 years ago, UN Security Resolution 1325. We're working on EU Gender Action Plan. We're working on our National Action Plan. So it seems that from the legal perspective and political perspective, everything is perfect. But now it's up to each and every state to start implementing. I was in New York when 2030 agenda was adopted, and of course I was proud that women empowerment and equal participation were mentioned as very important goals. But here I'd like to encourage each and every state to start taking actions, steps in implementation of the action plans and the international instruments. I'll give you some numbers, just some numbers about Estonia, so you know what we're talking about. When it was mentioned before that the participation, average global participation of women in the work of parliament is 20%, in our case it's 24%. I'm not proud of that. Member of government in Estonia, 2 ladies out of 15. I'm not proud of that. Our aim is to be like Canada. 15 men, 15 women. So although I hope my Prime Minister will not fire me immediately for this very outspoken statement, but I think that Estonia has much room of improvement today with only 2 women ministers. Although women have important portfolios, foreign affairs and trade. So at least we're breaking the stereotype that we can deal only with education and social affairs. Men are dealing with education and social affairs in Estonian government at the moment, and that's very important. The picture is a little better on the local level. On the local level, the participation of women in political life is 30%. Number of women out of mayors, city mayors, is 17%. And when we look at the obstacles, then it's difficult for women to be named in the leading roles of political parties. So far, we haven't had women as leaders of political parties. We need that. So far, we haven't had women as a prime minister. We need that at some point. And so far, we haven't had women as a president, which I think we also need at some point when our society is ready. From here, I'll move to foreign service, which is very close to my heart. And even before, in my former capacities as a legal advisor and ambassador to US, to Russia, to Kazakhstan, to Israel and other countries, and in all my previous capacities, the subject has been close to my heart. At some point, I was reporting to Council in Europe on participation of women in diplomacy and international security, and here I can be proud of my country. The average of the number of women diplomats is more than 60%. But what is even more important is that the number of ambassadors, I think, is one of the highest in Europe. More than 1/3 of our ambassadors are women, and they are posted to important cities. Okay, I don't want to say that there are not important cities or not important capitals. All of them are important. But still, I think it's a sign that you see a woman ambassador in some specific capitals. I'm not going to mention one specific capital where I was serving, but at some point, there were 141 men ambassadors and me. And that's not normal. We need, if not 50-50, definitely bigger number of women ambassadors, women participating in international affairs, women participating in security affairs, and so on and so on. She's not looking at me, which is good. No. And now we'll try to be practical. I had the luck of serving as an ambassador to Washington, D.C. And I had the privilege of meeting wonderful role models and ladies like Hillary Clinton, Madeleine Albright, Susan Rice, Condoleezza Rice, and others. And what I think that we all can learn from each other. And very practical tip. Madeleine Albright told me, she's telling everybody about that when she was US ambassador to the United Nations, she always picked the phones by women ambassadors. I introduced the same model in Tallinn. All women ambassadors know that in spite of time, they can call me and they'll pick their phone. I also learned from Madeleine Albright the messaging with brushes. She has about 1,000 of them. Usually when I speak at women conferences, I have two. Either it's a Scottish Terrier, you know, the black dog. I had one. They are smart, they are stubborn, they are intelligent, they are charming. And that's exactly... and that exactly as I see a real woman ambassador, woman politician, woman minister, and the wonderful ladies here.
But now 30 seconds.
And now I'll just mention briefly what I see, what we can do to encourage and women for more participation. First, encourage. Yes, some countries choose quotas, but I think that it's important to encourage and support each and every woman who decides to go into public life, into politics, into diplomacy. We have to get used that the headline is Estonia appointed woman foreign minister, although nobody ever writes that Estonia appointed man minister of agriculture. We have to get used of being criticized for our weight, for our hair, for our clothing, more than for the substance and for the real work we are doing. And we have to encourage each other, support each other to have much self-confidence. I'll stop here. I have many other thoughts, but during the discussion, I'll be happy to jump in.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for adding on top of the list also this international dimension, which is definitely very much interesting. And now I would like to pass the floor to Jaroslava Jermanová, who is the first vice speaker of the Czech parliament. So what about your country and your country's perspective on this issue, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of our session reads Women's Political and Economic Empowerment, Cornerstones for the Achievement of Gender Equality. I am sure you will agree with me if I say that the gender equality without an actually considerable number of women in top positions, both in politics and economy, is impossible to be achieved. Years spent in local government as a mayor of a village, as a member of the local government of a regional town, and now as a first deputy speaker of the House of Deputies in the Czech high politics, have given me in this respect very deep experience, and I feel that I know what it's need. It is very important to determine a plan and to take necessary measures to reach it within a reasonable time, step by step. Exactly like women in the Czech NGO called Women's Forum have already done it. Their project called Be Elected or Be Neglected, which had started 10 years ago, was last year replaced by a new one called Women, Please Elect Women, in which I am fully involved. How the project looks like is clearly seen in the following presentation. Those of you who are interested may obtain a CD with the presentation. As I have already said, the original idea came into sunshine nearly 10 years ago, and the original project, Be Elected or Be Neglected, started in 2009. The political movement, anno 2011, thanks to which I became the first deputy speaker of the House of Deputies, was from the beginning of its existence open to women and enabled in cooperation with the NGO Women's Forum, the foundation of the Women's Academy. Through the gender-oriented lectures of Women's Academy, female members of the anno 2011 influenced opinion of lots of women in the regions. The result was seen in general election. From 38 female deputies elected, there were 10 ladies from anno 2011. This is more than 25%. This slide shows the main reason for low eligibility of women in general elections, which has been disclosed until quite recently. The fact that the majority of female voters don't elect female candidates. This slide shows a bit strange behavior of women who, to the contrary, have been elected up to 15% and probably in order to survive among men they behave like men. The oldest reasons for such a behavior are the following. They are more critical to women, less solidary, and often preferring male leaders. Here we can see so-called a glass ceiling preventing women from reaching high positions in politics. The men don't allow them to come to eligible positions. The prejudice also do harm to women's political career, and many times they are not small. The men in high positions often declare that they keep the positions to prevent women from necessity to bear such a burden. But the truth is that in all places with less money and heap of work, mostly women do functions of mayor, etc., for instance, in hundreds of small villages. In general, it can be said that Czech women are missing so-called 3S. That is, self-references, self-confidence, and solidarity, which prevents them from taking over high positions. In the frame of the Women's Academy, we want to continue in giving lectures to leave Women's Academy open towards public and to organize public discussions forums. Last But not least, we want to support opening of a gender university, which would further replace the Women's Academy. Czech women are well prepared for their entrance into high politics. In younger categories, there are far more university-graduated women than men. Under communist regime, they passed in 3 generations through 2 shifts labor, which prepared them for managerial position. And I'm very happy that I can be here with you, and thank you very, very much for your attention, patience, and understanding.
Thank you very much for giving such a detailed picture of motivations and different aspects of gender equality in your country. It will definitely help for our discussion further on. So now we can move to the next speaker of our panel, and it's Hafida Benchehida, who is the Senator of Algerian Parliament. So welcome to Georgia, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you. I would like, first of all, to thank the organizer and tell them that I'm very proud and very happy to be here in Georgia. It's fascinating. I have been listening to the speeches yesterday of the president, today of the ministers, and really, I wish you all the best in this very interesting endeavor. As an Algerian senator, I'm not going to bore you with the figures. Algeria has been doing a lot of progress. Just to give you in a nutshell what we have 31% women in the parliament. We are the first in the Arab world. We are 29th position in the whole world. And beside that, we have, I can give you a lot of figures, women generals, women 70% of the judges in Algeria, more than 60% doctors. The high majority of academic and students in the university are women. This has been done through several decisions taken voluntarily by the government, especially since the last decade, imposing law of quota. Although one can discuss the ethical or philosophical value of a quota, but when you are dealing with a country, and especially in North Africa, with a lot of the tradition, you cannot just tell them we are equal, because otherwise we will have to wait till 2080. It has been decided we are not going to wait. And the government has taken very stringent laws imposing a quota. Quota, when it is based on equal competence, equal salary, equal skills, can be very helpful to overcome all the past prejudice and stereotype. And I'm sure that you are all aware about the stereotype existing in North African countries, Arab, Muslim countries, African, all the same, even in Southern Europe. Women cannot be a judge, women cannot be a minister, she cannot be a general, she cannot be a pilot, she can blah, blah, blah. So decision has been taken, and the last legislative and parliamentarian election that we had in Algeria in 2012, the quota was imposed, and any list presented by political parties, presented for local or national election, if they don't have minimum of 30%, because it goes with the number of seats to be provided. It's either 25% if you have just 4 seats, or 50% if you have up to 50 seats. So all the lists at the local level, at the department level, and at the national level have to have at least 30%, which is an average for women. And if the list does not submit women for the parliament or for the local election, the list is just totally rejected, and it's not accepted. So political party has to abide by it, even what we call Islamist, traditionalist, all the parties. So they had to abide by the new laws. So the end result is that, but still to be through, to be faithful to reality, effort has to be made, and so we are campaigning. There are group NGOs campaigning for more equal rights. The ideal objective is to reach the parity, and we are also working for that at the different level, in the parliament, in the NGOs, at the Senate also. So to reach that ideal position. But still, we have to overcome what is more important is in the rural area, all the stereotype, all the prejudice against women. And this is done. There are a national council that has been established in Algeria for equality, for the empowerment of women, not only on the political side, but also on the economic side. Very clear law and provision has been adopted to enhance women participation in the economic field, in the rural area, in the corporate business. We have not reached yet some countries that have the equal participation of women in board of corporation. It's more difficult for the economic field. We don't have that equal participation, let's say, in state, the major state corporation, but in the private sector, it's making a lot of progress. So this is what we do. We have plenty of women that are leading political parties, leading the newspaper. So they are chief director of the newspapers also. So quite independent, but still effort has to be made. And what can I tell you about what we are doing in Algeria? We are really very happy to participate in this kind of forum. And we are working a lot with all the UN agencies, the UNDP, the UNFPA, with the UN Women Organization, with the European Union also. So we try to contribute to improve the situation and try to be within the mainstream agenda of not only the women empowerment, but also fighting the violence against women. We have been adopting a new provision of the law, and we have already adopted in the past the CEDAW Convention, the Convention against Violence Against Women, and other international legal instrument. But we are doing that also on the region for the Arab countries, and we have within the association or the network of Arab women parliamentarians, we have a specific objectives about women empowerment, or training session, advocacy, and trying to make women more aware of their political position, their role in society, and in all the field of activities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you here and to talk about women's political participation and leadership. When I listened to the president yesterday and the distinguished speakers in the opening panel this morning, I thought there is not much to say. You know, they have covered all the different aspects of gender inequality and, you know, the reason why women should be empowered and participate with men in politics and the economy on equal terms. You know, everything has been said so far about these issues and the importance of this issue. But though, there's always something to add. And I say this, I've been around, I've not always been a UN official. I was also involved in politics in my home country, Iceland, for quite a long time. I've been around for like 40 years, working on gender equality and women's empowerment. And someone would say, you know, having not more results, why are you still there? But I have seen a lot of results. In these 40 years, I've seen a lot of results. Not thanks to me, but thanks to women, mainly women, that activists that are really willing to push for this agenda and also, you know, provide, be innovative and come up with good, you know, ideas and solutions and hold the politicians to account. So 40 years, and I've seen a lot of improvements, a lot of changes, a lot of good results. It always starts with the mindset, the change in the mindset. That's where it has to start. And when the mindset has been changed and people have a perspective on this and see this inequality and see how important it is for every nation to empower women, then we can see things start changing. But it happens in leaps, in jumps, but also there are also setbacks. And it's important that we try to initiate the jumps and resist the setbacks. And this is, has been going on, for like 40 years that way. But although I've seen a lot of improvements, there is no reason to be complacent, because improvements have often happened, both political and economic empowerment of women has often happened or been too slow and often too timid. And when I look at the European Union as a whole, I think it has been too slow and too timid. And, but there have been some key steps that can be taken to make progress. The wheel has been invented, and we can use it. And what we need is a genuine political will to make changes, to make these things happen. Genuine political will is needed. If we look back, there's a lot, about a century since women got the right to vote. In some countries before the others, but approximately a century since we got this right to vote. And still, we are, if we just look around in the world, women are only 21% of the parliamentarians. And in this region here, if we look at the this region here, in Georgia, women are 12% of the parliamentarians. In Azerbaijan, about 15%, and in Armenia, less than 11%. And if we look a little bit further afield, Turkey, where I am based as a regional director and also representative to Turkey, after the elections now in November, women are 14.9%, which is a major setback from the June election when they were 17%. So this is where we are. And even in the EU, the situation is very far from parity, very far from parity. I think women in this summer, they accounted for 28% of members of lower houses or single or lower houses in parliaments in the European Union. So this is where we are, but there are tools that can be used. The wheel has been invented. One of these tools are the quotas. And we can see that quotas are being a very useful tool where they are implemented in a very specific manner. I know, and I really appreciate that Georgia has now has a legislation on 30% supplementary public funding for the parties that have at least 30% of their candidates from a different gender in the group of every 10 candidates. And I think it will be interesting to see how this works in the elections next year here in Georgia. But there are other countries that have quota that is quite being effective. Just to mention, Croatia has now 24% women in parliament, and their quota system is actually based on fines. Political parties that are not having quota, they are fined. There is a sanction that they have to pay for that. And then we have also in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Then the situation is even tougher, because party lists are only certified if they meet gender equality requirements. So this is being implemented in several countries, and we've seen it working. But quotas are not the only thing that we need to do. It's good, but they are not enough. Women also need to have financial resources to be able to run for parliaments, to compete for the seats. They need also social and family supported, just as men, to be able to work as politicians. Men politicians have a lot of support from their wives. There's always someone there to take care of their shoes and that their shirts are ironed, that everything is in place. But women have to do this mostly themselves. But they need a good support from home, from family, and from husbands as well. I just want to close here by mentioning...
Yes, 30 seconds.
Yeah. Just to mention Article 4 of the UN Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, the CETA Convention, because it requires states to adopt temporary special measures to empower women. And this is too often ignored by countries, but it's there in the CETA Convention, which is a legal instrument for countries to use to have special temporary measures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ingibjörg, that you didn't push too hard only on quotas, because I'm always wondering if those quotas are functioning all across different sectors of society. Probably we would need another conference to talk about gender equality, but from male perspective. So it's definitely a more soft approach should be needed in that respect. So now we have the last speaker on the panel, but it's just wrapping up the first part of our discussion. And it's Salma Nima, who is Secretary General of the Jordanian National Commission for Women. So thank you very much for coming, and please, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and very quickly, I want to thank the government of Georgia for organizing such a very important high-profile conference, and I'm very honored to be sitting on a panel of such high-level women in the region, actually. I don't want to speak a lot about Jordan specifically in terms of what we've achieved, but I want to start with a little bit about it and come to your question, specifically about how political empowerment and political participation and economic empowerment can contribute to gender equality. But let me just shed the light about the challenges that Jordan faces, because I come from a country which for the past 50 years has done a lot in terms of trying to achieve, for its people, including women, in terms of progress and participation and economic progress. Yet we've been suffering floods and floods of refugees, which we find ourselves facing in terms of not only as a challenge for progressing women and gender equality, but how can we maintain the progress that we achieved as a nation and at the same time face other challenges related to providing protection and services to the refugees, and at the same time achieving gender equality and dealing with traditional mindsets that everybody was talking about. And this is really one of the main impediments for our regime to be able to achieve as much as we'd like as a nation to achieve. I want to refer to what Her Excellency Ms. Jihan Sultan Oglu talked about in relation to the fact that women participation, gender equality is about sustainable development. It's common sense. It is, it's not something, it's about diversity. And when we talk about diversity, then it's about being able to have planning, policy making that makes sense. And without women's participation, we cannot achieve that. I want to quote someone who I've been at the meetings in New York and at a State Department also celebration for the 15 years anniversary of 1325, and one of the participants said something about women participation in peace negotiations, but I think it makes sense to a lot of things. She said, men seek to share authority, women seek to share responsibility. And this is very important. I am not undermining men here, but when we say we're seeking power, it is not for the sake of power. It's the sake of contributing to this society. Now, and that's, from here, I'm gonna move to these two cornerstones, and they are really interrelated. How can women break away from gender-based violence if they are not economically empowered? In Jordan, we've done a lot in terms of awareness, in terms of putting the framework for women to be able to come forward and say that we are suffering from gender-based violence. But if this woman is unable to take care of her children and to be able to be economically independent, if she gets that divorce from that person, then she will not move forward to do that. And we were, again, I don't know who said that, I think the Prime Minister, that only 1 in 9 women seek to go for support in terms of gender-based violence. And we suffer that a lot in Jordan. So this is one of the first issues related to how can economic empowerment help us confront gender-based violence. Another area related to economic empowerment is ability to contribute to decision-making at the family level, at the community level, being able to contribute to community mobilization. This woman who is unable to feed her children, we have 17% poverty in the world. How are we expecting her to be, active in her community while she's suffering from all these issues? And then we go to the issue of ability to face discrimination. In Jordan, one of the issues that we face is pay gap. And I know that when I talk about Jordan, I talk most of the word. We have a range, but we yesterday also, I was in Jordan. The German head of the GIZ was saying that the pay gap in Germany is 22% between men and women. In Jordan, for the private sector, it's actually 42%. But, and we have actually a committee for gender pay equity, yet the suffering is still there. And again, these women remain in their jobs, although they know that there is this gap, because they don't have a choice. They want that job, and they need to be protected. So basically, breaking away of all forms of discrimination is not possible without economic empowerment. And finally, which lead us to the political participation, how could women run for elections if they're not able to access finance? Whether it is in the municipal elections and the parliamentarian elections, we know that rich men, and it's actually rich men, not even, so we know that men who are not rich and women are the least able to run their campaigns in a way that would make them increase their chances to succeed. So we know that there's a lot related to legislation, but this finance issue is very important. So now we have a situation where women, although we have quota system, and we have it in many countries, and we have it in Jordan, at the municipal level, I have to say 36% of the municipal councils are women, and 12% of the parliament is women. And until yesterday, we had 5 ministers who are women out of 27. We had a ministerial change yesterday, and we lost a woman. So we have 4 now. I was making calls to the prime ministry, trying to hope that we're actually going to keep the women, but we couldn't. So, and then that brings us to the issue of sustainable development. If women are not in political positions, whether in the government, whether in the parliament, whether in the boards of the private sector, then we will not be able to make a real shift in the development paradigm. How are we going to change the minds? How are we going to take into account all the different needs and what kind of environment that we need to create and what kind of conditions we need to create in order to reach gender equality if we don't have enough women in decision-making positions? If we don't have enough women who are setting the policies? If we don't have a critical mass in the parliament that would influence legislations towards increasing opportunities for women? Now we are in Jordan going through a reform process. Lots of laws are being amended. One of them is the election law, and we have a decentralization law. We fought to have a quota for women on the decentralization law, and the parliament we could get only 15% because we don't have enough women to push that agenda. And now in the election law, they only increased the quota from 10% to 12%, and to us it's not enough. So now I'm going back today in order to make that fight again, in order to be. And that's basically, I'm going to wrap up by saying, we have to have more women in order to create the political will to be able to achieve gender mainstreaming in policy making.